Hey, we're Jewish. We're used to hearing that you're going to be a Jewish doctor, you're going to be an attorney, you're going to be a lawyer or something.
Yeah, Jewish doctor, Jewish lawyer. But I refuse passionately to follow that advice.
Welcome to Story and Craft. Now, here's your host, Mark Preston.
Hey, how are you? Welcome back. Story and Craft. Glad to have you here. I'm Mark Preston. Thanks for coming back for another episode. Today, we are talking with one of the guys I think is one of the most intriguing guys to me floating about Hollywood. Ariel Vromen is a director, and he's directed movies like Criminal, The Iceman, The Angel, and he's directed projects with some of Hollywood's biggest names, kind of like Kevin Costner, Ryan Reynolds, Gal Gadot, Chris Evans, Wynona Ryder, Gary Oldman, a whole bunch of other folks, too. Now, in addition to directing, Ariel is also a DJ. He DJs concerts all over the world and is just a really interesting guy. Great conversation. We cover his time as a soldier in the Israeli Defense Forces and just talk about movie making. And I think you'll enjoy it. It's a great chat. And don't forget, by the way, the website, storyandcraftpod.com. Once again, storyandcraftpod.com. It's a great way to stay in touch, sign up for the newsletter, and, generally just anything about the show is going to be on storyandcraftpod.com. Okay, let's get after it. It is Ariel Vromen Day here on Story and Craft. First off, I want to wish you happy birthday.
Thank you, man.
Now, I am your elder. I'm 13 days older than you.
Oh yeah, so you also an Aquarian?
Yes, sir. So we were both children of '73. It was a good year. But I thank you, by the way, for taking the time to sit down with me today. I know you're a busy guy. You're filming right now, right?
Yeah, I mean we finished. I have like a few additional days in the end of this week, but we're almost done. So it's just like some posts, some second unit stuff, and we're almost done with the film. But I'm in the week, I said like in the weekend. So I'm still playing music. So I just came back from Mexico City a few hours ago.
How would you define what you do? Is it more in the realm of maybe house, sort of? How would you define what you do musically?
Yeah, it's deep house, Afro house, techno, minimal techno. So it's a little bit modern sounds that kind of like evolved from Ibiza, and because I used to DJ and make a lot of trance music back in the 90s, so in Europe. And then I quit that, and then I went to films. And it's not only until 2016 that I made this movie called Criminal that I needed like a song. And so they sent me to Ibiza. And I went to Ibiza and I saw this DJ Solomon, and he had a remix for a band called The Falls, who is a band that I love, and it was just an incredible remix. And then I was reintroduced again to the electronic music and to this new vibe, but it's a whole different universe. I mean, it has much more intelligence, much more sophistication. Making that music also that I have now a studio, it's given me a lot of freedom, but just the idea of playing music again in front of a crowd and not just be stuck behind the camera.
My best friend and I remember it was 94, 93, something like that. We went down to Cancun. And, of course, Cancun, you had a lot of folks from South America, Europe. And the vibe and the music we got exposed to was way different. And I kind of started ball rolling. I worked in radio for a lot of years, and I syndicated shows. And I found that as I kept coming back to that, is just music that I felt was interesting. It's like any other kind of music, but the amount of passion that people have for it, when you're on stage and you're doing it, it's a much different energy than I think just about any other genre of music, at least for the DJ, for sure.
It is because it sounds like a one-man show, and how often do you see just a band with one singer and a guitar on it?
I found it's the one genre of music I'm always jazzed to get exposed to what's new. What's going on now, and it seems like what's going on now, they're taking samples and calling back to what was going on in the 90s. Do you think the 90s were kind of a golden age for what we call it trance, techno, house, the under the EDM umbrella?
Yeah, that's right. That's where I started, exactly in the mid-90s. And then we used to go to Goa, to India. And that was a kind of like the center of that gathering from all around the world. And now it's like Ibiza or Tulum in Mexico, which is not so far from Cancun, but it's just a little bit up in the peninsula. But yeah, it's an amazing world. I mean, you connect to people in a very strong way. I found it very funny because I've been making movies already now for 15 years, and I always find like I meet people and I need to tell them what I did, and then some of them seen the film, some of them didn't see the film, but then it's just a constant conversation about what you're doing and what you're about. And since I got into the music and it went really, really fast and strong, it's amazing that I just said my name and immediately like, oh, you're the DJ. And I'm like, well, I'm a filmmaker.
The soundtrack, it's funny you mentioned that, is very unique. It's very forward momentum. You don't really have too many breaks in the movie. It keeps you moving forward.
So that song, the song that Kevin Costner is driving in the van across London, that's the song that got me back to music.
Are you talking about after he stole the van and he's kind of cruising around and he's starting to have the flashbacks?
Exactly. That's right. So there was a calling up your name. So that was like a big remix, and it's funny enough because that song it became one of the famous songs of that DJ that now is like one of the biggest in the world, and it was kind of like an introduction again for me for a world that I stepped away completely because I was running away from the electronic scene all over the early 2000s.
Well, at that age, weren't we just kind of like always, trying to pick up the next thing and just trying to like get a grip on what it is we're wanting to do for the long haul, And
then you stop yourself because people say to him, especially, I mean, I guess it's getting, everything is changing so fast, in the business. And it used to be very awkward if you're saying yourself that you're a director and you're also a DJ. It's like, what? You almost like Hollywood wanted you to make a decision of your identity, of who you are and what you're about and what you want to do. And it's like it was even hard to say that you're an actor and you want to do direct. And then it's kind of like you cross that path. And then if you are a producer, are you a director as well? If you are a cinematographer, are you a director? So there was your director, stay as a director. You can write, but stay there. Don't produce, don't act. So I found it in the beginning when I said that I want to go back to music and go back to performing, that it got a little bit people confused about what is my path anymore. And now it's actually somehow it's all molding again together because it's funny enough, like when you're building yourself a name outside the movie business, suddenly the people are more curious to see your work in movies.
Well, it's kind of like back in the day, you either were you were a TV actor or you're a film actor. Now that line's just, nobody even cares anymore, and I think what makes people
there's no borders anymore.
Yeah, like there are a lot of musicians. In fact, Kevin Costner is a musician, if I'm not mistaken. Does he have a band?
He has a band. Yeah, I know. But he plays country music. Although he loves electronic, I took him to a few of my shows. But he is a big country guy,
which serves him well in his current endeavors in Yellowstone. It's so funny. There's so much stuff out there right now that people like. Have you seen? And they just fill in the blank. I'm like, no. It's just there's so many, and it's all good. All the stuff. It's. I don't know if I would ever have time to go back and watch reruns of any. I'll go back and watch sometimes older movies, but as far as TV, I'm always kind of checking out whatever's new.
I never, since the day I remember myself, I cannot remember different time that the convoluted materials and so much content around you, and it's stressful because sometimes you really want to sit down, and especially if you have kids. You don't have the time to sit down, and because I got to watch El Canto 500 times. And
so, how many little people do you have bouncing around your house?
I just have one daughter.
How old is she?
But she's 3.5.
Ah, very good.
So I'm a late bloomer, and in my fatherhood.
Well, enjoy it, and the only piece of advice, I am your elder. I'm 13 days older than you, so you have to take my advice.
So I'm going to listen to this.
So it's just enjoy every moment. I remember back when my oldest is in college now. My son's he's about to go to college as well. They're going to be going to the same school, but it's my baby is 16, which is just mind blowing. And I just remember back in the day and. We're running through, filling up that diaper genie and all the crying and all that stuff. It's like after a while, it's like, man, I took a moment. I said, as gnarly as it is sometimes and stressful, or whatever it is. I said, 10 years from now, I bet I'm going to want one of these days back. And I was right, So it's like just live in that moment, man. I think as a creator, you already do that.
You miss the toddlers running around.
I do say that, but having a recording studio here and having little kids, actually, they've always been very good. They knew that when Daddy's in the studio, they were like quiet. I want to touch base and kind of like your origin story there. Now you're originally from Israel.
Yeah, that's it.
Now, where's your family originally from?
My father is Dutch. So his family was there's a town outside of Amsterdam called Utrecht. So that's where part of that. And my mom is Polish, and there was some Latin American, Argentinian blood in her side. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of like my mix, but both parents were born in Israel.
No, it's actually my best friend is from Holland. His father was very famous, I guess I say soccer, football player there. And they always tell me that the Dutch folks have the best snacks, any kind of snack food, anything you eat off the street or whatever. It's always... Now, so that's my main impetus for wanting to go to Amsterdam.
Fries with mayonnaise.
Oh, yeah, I saw my friend doing that. He's like,
they have all those cheese pastries.
Oh, it's insane. And bitterballen, that thing is just basically fried gravy. I don't know.
That's right.
But now, so you served in the Israeli Defense Forces. Now, what was your? Not everybody does.
Yeah, it's a mandatory, but and then again, it's I guess my childhood was evolved because we went to Brazil because my father used to have business over there in agriculture, and then we came back, and then I did high school, and then in high school in Israel it's divided. Like you have the guys or the girls, especially the guys that want to be a soldier and do something specifically unique and exciting, and then you have the guys like me that wanted to either be in the army band because I play drums, and I hope that maybe I'm gonna hold the camera in the army like my brother did it.
Really?
Because I started to make short films when I was pretty young. So at 13 I got my first Bolex 8mm camera, and that's Super 8. So I had a splicer and I was editing the movies, and so that was my passion. But then around 17, I started to realize that all my friends starting to look at me a little bit weird and like, why you don't want to do something serious? And I'm like, I just don't want. I want to take the symbols and do like that when the soldiers are marching. But then a little bit of social pressure around my very close friends over there, and then I found myself training like crazy before the army, and then I end up in one of the most special unit. It's called the 669. It's the Air Force Rescue Unit, which we are the only unit in the Israeli army that is actually working parallel to the Red Cross, and we are the only rescue airborne evacuating unit in the region. So we basically taking care of course, but Israel and Palestine, Egypt, south of Egypt, Syria and Lebanon. And Jordan, even a few areas in the Aqaba Desert. So I had a service that I saved and helped more actually Arab soldiers and citizens than Israelis. But the unit itself was formed to basically to rescue pilots that abandoned their planes in hostile areas. But because there's not so much pilots that ditch their plane, so our everyday job is like, a serious car accident or some traveler that fell in a canyon or a boat that got stuck in the middle of the ocean. So we kind of like, it's a combine of a Coast Guard.
I was just about to say, it sounds a lot like the Coast Guard's duty in the U.S.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a combination of the two. But it was very demanding service. I had to sign another year. So usually you do 3 years. I did 4 years in the service. And the nerd guy that wanted to just play drums and use the camera in the army ended up to be the only. And then all my friends that pushed me to do it, they all somehow find the way out of the serious combat unit. And they went every evening back home, where I didn't see home for 3 years.
So you had to live in the barracks, or you had to live on the base, right?
Yeah, so either base, and then every other Saturday or so, on the weekend, you're going back home. But again, my service was super demanding and super, super intense. So I think when I finished the army, I was like, wow, I was still confused. And then I skipped a little bit what everybody else is doing in Israel. Where after the army, they need to kind of like let go. So they're all going to India or to South America to travel with a backpack and discover themselves. And I went straight to law school. So I was a very strict person. Like I didn't smoke, I didn't drink. I was like really like straight A's. Like in the idea of like, I was actually against everything a lot. Like I was like, no, don't do that, don't do this. So I went to law school.
What kind of work did your parents do? Were you kind of following the path? Was your father an attorney, or?
Yeah, my father was an engineer, and he was also a patent attorney, and he actually was one of the 3 guys that founded all the VC tech in Israel back in the early 90s. So that's kind of like he became very big in tech, and that's what his main thing. My mom was always, she had like different things. She worked in real estate. She was working at raising funds for the universities, but she was more the artistic side of between my parents, because my father could not. I mean, he loved movies, but he could not go to a museum or listen to a concert. He was like, no, it's too much for him. So I think I got a little bit the artistic side of my mom, definitely from my brother. But funny enough, when I finished the army and when I finished the law school, and I was supposed to go and train and do the practice back in Tel Aviv, I realized that I'm doing something wrong. And during law school, I think on the 2nd or the 3rd year, all my friends went to Amsterdam. And they said, you have to come. And I'm like, okay, I'll come see you. And suddenly at the age of 24, 25, I'm finding myself in the middle of the Dam Square in Amsterdam. And suddenly somebody give me a joint, and somebody give me tequila, and so like rarely like I ever even seen that. Like suddenly it was all over me, and in one weekend I did everything that I didn't do for 25 years. So what it did to me, it did open a certain box, and that box was basically that I need to do creative stuff. I think creative, I think visuals, I think sound.
But that wasn't even something on your mind until like 24.
No, I was like, I'm going to be a lawyer. I'm going to go to tech. I was a very serious soldier. There was nothing that in my soul that thought I'm going to go back to what I did in my childhood. But also, I've been constantly being told by my parents while they supporting me making movies and buying me equipment and do all that stuff, but they constantly said, this is just a hobby. Don't even think that this is going to be your job in life, that you're going to be able to do that.
Hey, we're Jewish. We're used to hearing that you're going to be a Jewish doctor, you're going to be an attorney, you're going to be a lawyer or something.
Yeah, Jewish doctor, Jewish lawyer. But I refuse passionately to follow that advice, I guess. And then I came back to Israel. I worked a little bit in my dad's practice. I started to do what they call it stage. It's like basically you need to do 1 year of practice before you going to do the bar exams. And a friend of mine called me and he said, "Hey, I'm going to NYU Tisch Film School." And I was like, "Wow, that's so cool." And he said, "Do you want to come to New York and visit me?" And I was also part of me being very strict and straight. I got married very early. I got married when I was 24 years old. And she was actually an American girl. So I was like, okay, let's go to New York. And I went to New York, and I thought I'm just going to go for a couple of weeks.
New York seems to be the landing spot where a lot of folks, in New York or L.A., they're going to go to the coast. So the Israeli folks that I know, that's kind of where they go to at least hang out for a spell, a little while,
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a good station. But I arrived to New York, and I think that the second day I went to NYU, to the film school, and I realized that there's no chance that I'm not going to do that. Like I was amazed. I was like, I'm going to go to university.
Wasn't it kind of like relief going, okay, this is it right here. This is what
It wasn't relief, but it also created a huge drama in my family. I mean, my father was like so upset. He almost didn't talk to me for 3 years. And it was like a big disappointment. And how can I not come back? And how can I leave after they invested all those studies of law in England and la 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 la. and what's wrong with me, and what is it? You're smoking a joint? Are you crazy? So my whole creative suddenly persona, but I took a big chance on it, and I think that's something that I always tell young people or people that I meet that have dreams or they have inspiration and they don't know what, and I said, listen, you're going to pay a price, and there is a price. And my mom was right. I did pick up a very, very, very problematic occupation. Being a filmmaker, it's like, you need to be a little bit crazy.
At the wrap of every job, you're out of work technically. Yeah, it can be stressful I can see how that can be stressful for parents. But what now, your father was resistant, but you said your mother was the creative one. What was her input while you were going through this kind of odyssey?
She didn't play music. She just was. Her creativity was her knowledge in art. She's still today saying to me, Freeze exhibition is coming to LA. You should go see this exhibition. And she kept on saying to me that, you're a director, maybe it's going to inspire you. So she pushed me even as a teenager, like to go to the museums and to see art and to expand my mind outside, whatever media that we were consuming back in the 80s or early 90s, which was not much. I mean, like a VHS or a movie theater, part of the thing is right now that I'm also a victim. We all a victim of it. Is like the amount of of audiovisual that we exposed to, and when you basically exposed to your phone and you're watching over 3 or 4 hours a day, what happened is our memories stop working. Basically, people don't remember anymore the content they've been viewing. See, this is the kind of like time we're living right now. Kids or not kids or grown-ups or teenagers or mature people, they're watching material and they don't remember what they watched. The day after, they're like, oh yeah, we saw a movie. I can't remember the name. And what was the name of the actor? And what it was about? It's because it's becoming just like another killing time. Like, maybe some people still, you're getting emotional, but not as much as emotion as we used to get from watching material.
I think patience probably has something to do with it, because somebody knows a couple seconds into a movie or a show, if they don't really like it, it's same thing like with dating or whatever else. It's okay, on to the next thing. They're not really taking the time to kind of get into it.
Yeah, you have all those dating apps, and you have Instagram and TikTok, and you can see it's like a magazine of humans. And it's weird because you are a content provider. Now everybody is saying, we need content, we need more movies, we need more TV, we need more this. So in other words, like people look at me, it's like, your business is thriving right now. You must be very happy. And I am, and it's good times. We work, there's a lot of things on the pipe, and I'm busy, and I'm not complaining. But the outcome and the result of what you're doing right now has a completely different meaning.
So how does that affect your selection process on the projects because you're obviously a storyteller, be it musically, through film. What exactly is your decision-making process? Because there are a whole lot of opportunities out there. What are you kind of sitting down when you look at things on your desk and go, yeah, I kind of want to work on this project? What's your decision-making on that?
That's a good question. I think for me, it's always the selective. Like I need to read, regardless the subject matter or the world that the movie is in. I need to read it first, and sometimes I'm very excited. Like somebody pitched me an idea or a story or a concept, and I'm like, wow, this is great. And then I'm sitting down and I'm reading it, and by page 20, I either want to throw the script on the wall or just like never come back to it.
Yeah.
So it's about connectivity to the material when I read it, and so first of all I need to read it and to really like it, and then I started to do a process of saying, okay, I'm home right now. Would I leave my house right now and go to the movie theater to watch that? Which is a question that I'm barely asking anymore.
Yeah, I was about to say the idea of leaving the house, is that even a
It's becoming like a history. It's a history channel, right?
Well, I heard Spielberg talk about something a couple of years ago. He said something to the effect of, we're not going to have movies in theaters the way you or I grew up watching movies in theaters. You'll have the big blockbusters, ones that'll hang out.
George Lucas.
Yeah,
Only franchise.
Yeah, that's what do you think? Is that a good thing, or do you think there should be more of a push to get people into a theater? It doesn't really not make it that much of a difference right now.
I don't have any. I to be honest with you, I think I'm at this point in my life. Because I accepted Netflix actually very early in the game. I did a movie for them in 2017.
Was it an Angel or?
Yeah, The Angel. And in 2016, Netflix was sitting down in Beverly Hills. They had like a small office. I remember like one little floor. And everybody was like very weird with me. Like, why are we going to go do a movie for a place called Netflix? I mean, why? And probably funny to say is that the reason that I did a movie for Netflix is because at that time, at 2000 and I think it was 2011, I met Ted Sarandos, the co-CEO of Netflix today. And I had a documentary that I was trying to put together about water crisis in the Southwest, and it's called Running Dry. And we made it, and it was a small documentary, but very, very, very important, or it was very interesting material. And I went to lunch with Ted, and I said to him, Ted, listen, can you put it just on your platform? I mean, you have DVDs, right? You can go online and check your queue, and you send DVDs to people. And I remember, I'm still reminding him every time I see him. And he said to me, Ariel, I really want to help you, but you need to understand, I'm a tech guy. I'm not a content person. I have no idea about movies, about what people like, or what people will view. And in 2011, the idea of producing for Netflix was not even on the chart.
It's not that long ago. And look at what a quantum
leap.
It's not that
long ago. That's what I'm saying. Ted Sarandos today is probably, Robert Evans is a child producer compared to Ted Sarandos. In terms of the amount of material that this studio has made, Ted Sarandos right now is the most, credited producer studio in the history of cinema and television.
I think there's a lot of content that would never have gotten made, that would have sat on, in the screenplay stack in some office somewhere and never would have gotten greenlit had it not been for Netflix. Like you talk about EDM, the movie was it XOXO? Would that movie have gotten made without Netflix? It's such a niche kind of a thing.
But I know that for a fact that they're, and again, Netflix of 2022 is even completely different from the Netflix that I re-engaged in 2016, 2017, where they just had the success of House of Cards, and it was suddenly, they realized that they want to make more material. In fact, Scott Stuber, who is now running all the films over there, when he came from Universal, his first meeting, on his first day of work, he met with me for lunch, and we were sitting down, and he asked me, so how is it? How is Netflix? What's going on over there? And I actually had a lot of positive things to say, because it was really about filmmakers, and it was really about a studio that just getting into a space that becoming a new space. And I remember, the conversation even earlier, like in 2015 or 2014, about how Blockbuster didn't read them up. They had all the vendors. They had all the deals.
Oh, did you ever see that documentary that Kevin Smith did about Blockbuster and the last Blockbuster that's left? Kevin Smith did it. It was really interesting because it went down. Of course, this was something that Netflix. It's a Netflix production, I believe, but it was talking about there's one Blockbuster left in the whole world. And going back in time and how they did it, how the mom and pops would, have, if you want to go see, like when we were kids, you want to go see Terminator, they may have like two of them, two VHSs sitting around. And then Netflix came in and Blockbuster came in, they changed up the game because they worked out kind of like a revenue share agreement with the studios, and the studios like, oh, that makes some sense,
It was the best thing that ever, like DVDs back in, early 2000 was the most profitable revenue for back ends for filmmakers, actors, and producers, because that was a whole new. Ticket selling is one thing because you got to split with the theaters. You got to, the studios has a share. Until you see any money from tickets from theater, as a filmmaker, You got to dig in the books and probably eventually get into bad blood with every studio because you're gonna audit them, and it's never end up well. The DVDs were very simple. It was like, this is the amount of CDs that we're making, and this is the amount of rentals that comes through the computer every time we check out a DVD from Blockbuster. So I think to see how the world changed so fast in the last decade, in our business, in storytelling, and it's mind blowing. I really I sometimes I gotta pinch myself, and it's like, I can't believe that I've been through all this ride, and suddenly now we have like a whole new reality of decision making. Netflix, that used to be about filmmakers or this, they still have a couple of creators that are following, but right now, they're making decisions on marketing and algorithms.
I would love to be just a fly on the wall when they go over like the actual numbers, real downloads, what the real metrics of all the stuff behind the curtain we don't get a chance to see. That'd be so fascinating. I think.
But I think when you're getting into a size of a company that size in valuation, it's similar to probably some big pharma company or whatever. This is where the individual doesn't need to know what's going on, because maybe it's because like, if we're gonna get the real numbers on everything, it would be great, but I think we are in the dark, because nobody want to tell you that Red Notice was the most watchable film of Netflix of all times. As much as I love Gal Gadot and I love Ryan Reynolds and I work with both of them, in fact I introduced them to in Criminal. I thought it was a disastrous film. It was $200 million that I could not understand where the money goes. And then on the other hand, you getting those reports, this is the biggest success. And you're like, if this movie will compete on a theatrical, which is what we call, a ground zero of a reflection of your success, you cannot argue with ticket sales, And suddenly, nobody cares about, okay, so obviously Spider-Man is the biggest phenomenon right now with $1.8 billion in the box office, which is still, it's mind-blowing. But then again, they're telling you that this is the most watchable movie on Netflix, and they have to justify $200 million investment for their stockholders. So whatever me want to be fly on the wall or not, it's like, you will never know how many that people watch only 30 seconds of it.
I tell my students, I tell the people I work with, I'm like, listen, if you want to do something, go create something. There's so many platforms to get it out there, maybe even just YouTube or Vimeo or whatever. But I think there was a point in time where there are a lot of people who just had a great idea, they had a great script, they had a team or whatever in place, and Netflix is handing out money. It's like, go make it. I mean, that's kind of I wonder if it's going to be looked back on as being some kind of a golden era of content creation.
It is a golden area, and eventually, look, we knew it from the beginning, and it's going to happen probably by 2025 or maybe a little bit later, that didn't survive, if it's going to be, there will be top 5. Eventually we're going to shrink down to 5 studios, streamers that are basically going to provide us all of our content in our life. And they're going to merge, or they're going to put together studios. I don't know what will happen, but funny enough, if you're looking at even at the terrain that we're living right now at, one of the biggest question marks that I ask every day is, what happened to Sony? How come a studio that had already a digital box, the Sony PlayStation, in almost every other home in the world, we're not the first one to realize that they have the box already in people's home and convert that box into the streamer? It's like, it's mind-blowing that one of the only studio that is kind of like funded by a tech company, a complete tech company, not just like, in a telecommunication company, but a real tech company could not make that, could not read the game ahead of it. And now they are providing content for Netflix. Okay, of course, they had a huge success with Spider-Man right now, but one movie that holding the whole studio, one film. And you're like, wow, that's mind-blowing. Look at Warner Brothers, they went all in on HBO Max. Apple bought MGM, and they hopefully that will help them a little bit. I don't know if they're going to survive with the way they're making stuff over there. But all the rest, like Amazon, they're like, this is like, but Sony.
It's funny.
Like,
My 17-year-old son, he's got a PlayStation 5, and he I believe you can. They do have some apps, but they didn't really push it as being a streaming over-the-top device the way Roku or whatever else. And that would have been a great dual-purpose thing. Like, hey, games for your kids, and you get to watch movies on it.
You already bought the machine.
Yeah,
it's in your home. You need to put a chip to go to make it online streaming. It's literally the easiest thing. And it's mind-blowing that big studio didn't read the map and didn't, try to catch, because I think today, like looking at Disney, looking at, the merger of Disney and Fox and whatever, like if you don't have a streaming outlet as a studio right now, you're not going to survive anymore, unless you're going to really downscale your stuff, and you literally you're going to be a studio that provide films to other streamers.
Yeah, it seems like the folks that are making the content also, like you mentioned, Amazon or HBO Max, and they already had a deep library to begin with, or they go buy one. Now that kind of brings me to a question: like when you're directing a movie, I've always been curious about this with directors that also write. Do you prefer, or is there even a preference to work on a project that you've created, that you've written the screenplay, or is there any real big difference when the day comes to director? You just want to direct, and however you get to sit in the chair.
It's never happened. It never happened. Unfortunately, I think I never. But it's also because there is ranks of directors. There's the A-list, and then there's like the second B-list, and then there's there's a pile of filmmakers in our lifetime that getting scripts and getting different levels of very high-end writers. I'm not the one who gets Aaron Sorkin scripts. There will be at least probably, I don't know, 50 or 60 or 100 directors that will watch it, will read that script before it's going to get to me. So when I got material, it's usually decent material, or material that we're in turnaround, or material that I'm getting that somebody I'm talking about like external materials that I'm getting. So the majority of the scripts that I get, or I got in the past, are just good enough to attract me to start working on the project.
From pre-production, production, post, that's about a year of your life you're committing to it.
It's a big commitment, but what I found that that even in The Angel, or even now in the movie I just did, 92, or in Criminal. In Criminal was actually a little bit different, because it was my cousin and his partner wrote that movie, and they wrote The Rock and Double Jeopardy, and they were working on all the Bourne series. So they had so they were very involved with me in prep. But usually I get a script, and I'm working a little bit with the writer and see if we can get into the right place together. And sometimes it works well, but still there's always a moment that the writer is basically, I'm kind of like taking over the material when it's come into the practicality of preparing a shoot and to preparing in pre-production. And actually when the actors come in, I found it in many cases in the past, like when the writer had to convince the original writer to do their changes or the things that we would discuss, there was always a lot of drama. I also realized that I thought that there is I rewrote the whole script. I should get a credit. I should do this. I should fight for something. And also that's something that The Angel kind of like taught me that it's a battle that I never go again to.
You say like Aaron Sorkin, his screenplays are very specific. The word, it's just, there's a rhythm to how it's supposed to be said. How are you about actually? How do you look at improvisation, or do you like to really stick to the script?
It also depends. It really depends on the actors. If they have the ability. Not every actor has the ability to improvise and to be interesting. Some actors are not as interesting as people, and they don't have that much of an experience as a human being. And so for them, but they deliver words and lines of other writers amazingly. I mean, they can mold into characters. I think that for me, it depends on the material, it depends on the actors. But when I get to set and we read scene and we block it, and we kind of like, okay, so let's just, and I find myself always sitting down and kind of like saying, okay, I'm watching the movie right now, and how does it sound? And even then, I worked on that scene, and some of the lines that I just wrote the night before, or like whatever. I'm trying to listen to my intuition and say, oh no, this one doesn't work. We have an issue with it, or this part of the scene feels stall, or I'm not getting any emotions out of these characters right now in the way it's written right now. So what I do after we do like a little bit of reading and blocking, and if I still have my stomach starting to turn, which I'm not feel confident, basically where we are, then I'm opening a discussion. So I'm getting the actors with me, and I said, okay, so in the beginning I felt really strong, but then the turn point when you said that to him, that felt super distant, and that was not the purpose of the scene. So I'm going back to them on the day, and I said, what are we trying to achieve in this scene? This scene is specifically in the storytelling, it's got to move us from that this character is going to make a decision to do it, but why he makes a decision. And then we started to look around for props, and I'm starting to look around for some, maybe there's a way to say things different. Now, because English is not my first language, I always encourage my actors to say, how would you say it? If you need to basically get out of a situation that you just got caught, and you have 5 minutes to escape from this situation, and you need to ask for a favor from your friend, what would be the way that you're going to approach it? And we know that the script suggested certain lines, but maybe there is a better way. And sometimes I do that, and we found really great magic. But also, I've been inexperienced.
There's got to be some kind of chemistry that they can bounce off each other pretty well.
100%. But so you need to be very, very intuitive to that and sensitive to that moment, because if you try to create an improvisation, or you try to create what we call a realism within the narrative, and it doesn't really hold, then in editing you're watching a scene that you thought that somehow you're like what is this? I mean, it's even worse than I thought. So I learned from my previous mistakes to be very careful of when I let the leash go and when I stop believing in the material. Kevin Costner is actually the one who really taught me that lesson. He is such a strong believer on scripts. He would go and see a cut of a filmmaker, either mine or others, and then he will ask to go and watch the assembly cut. And he would sit down with the original script that he got, that he wrote the notes, and he would literally say, we gotta figure it out how to make the words that is written work. So that's his method. He's very much so. So the script for him is a holy Bible. And then you have actors like Michael Shannon or Ray Liotta. Or Ray Liotta is like a good example. Ray Liotta, he kind of like doesn't even... He read the script, but he never reads out loud. He never before he gets to the set, he never even try to say the words that the character is saying. So for him, it's much easier to just try and figure it out. Oh, this word sounds stupid. I'm going to go say it this way. So there's actors that you need to know each one what its strength. But if you refine your intuition on the set to understand and who you're working with, how can you make certain scenes better by staying away from the script, or some certain scene to stick to the script? I think it's only experience.
Well, it's funny you mentioned Ray Liotta, because in The Iceman, one of the greatest things about him in that film were all the scenes where he had very little dialogue. I mean, he's got those blue eyes. He just like is just staring. Like when he's sitting in the back of the car, he comes over to Michael Shannon's house towards the end of the movie, and his daughter's trying to walk in. He's just sitting there staring at him. You just don't know what's that not knowing what's next.
This is Ray in real life. Try and be on the set with him. He sits on his chair with the page of the script, and then it's something like I need to come. And we became really good friends after The Iceman, and I just did another film with him, and it's almost like he lifts his eyes and he looks at you straight in the eyes, and you're like, okay, I'm in trouble. Okay, maybe I'm not in trouble. But you don't know. You have no idea because he has such a fiercely powerful eyes.
There was a movie he was in back in 93, 94. I think it was called like The Island, or basically they sent prisoners to this island that are basically on death row. I forgot the name of it, but I interviewed him, and I sat down. I was at a kind of an outside, like a courtyard, kind of a cocktail plate, whatever it was, and I'm sitting there talking with him, and he has this kind of cool, like, he just, when he's sitting there just like looking at you, you don't know if it's like, is he just really paying attention to me, or is he sick of listening to what I have to say? He was a sweetheart of a guy, though, but he just got that riveting look,
He's very nice to crew and to a filmmaker if he likes you. The first day on Iceman, he was humiliated the shit out of me. I mean, he tried to break me down, and I didn't budge. And I think the fact that I was insisting on something and I was pretty strong about it got his confidence. And once he trusts you as a filmmaker, is amazing. I mean, this experience we just had on 92 to do together, he subordinate himself to my decisions, which was very, very nice.
When you look at Kevin Costner, Gary Oldman, Tommy Lee Jones, Ryan Reynolds, I mean, just going down the list, you're working with these guys who just their name alone will get a film greenlit. But how do you earn trust? Because when I've listened to actors talk about they're working with directors they're not terribly familiar with or they've never worked with before, trust is a real big thing for them before they kind of submit to the process. How do you earn that trust?
I think it's a combination of, it's I guess part of it is my personality. That is, I'm super passionate when I like something. You just see me now. I just arrived from Mexico City. I literally barely slept for 2 days because we are like a big event that I played, and then they basically celebrate my birthday now so I'm my energy right now is the lowest possible. But I'm still excited to talk to you. So I guess that's what I do when I meet an actor. I go to my passion source, to why am I doing something, and I'm really trying to get them to join what I'm thinking and what I'm seeing, and it's also you also got to touch some personal level. You understand, I understand that they're gonna test me. I know the game already, so I kind of like let them throw the arrows, and then I'm showing them how I respond to that.
Do you think it's because that do you think they do that because and this is purely hypothesis, because they've got their brand? When you bring Kevin Costner in a movie, you're not just hiring an actor, you're bringing everything he's done, the brand of who Kevin Costner is, and they're trying to protect their brand. Do you think that's kind of the reason why they're testing you to make sure
100%.
that?
I mean, and again, you need to remember Kevin Costner or another great friend of mine that I didn't work with, Mel Gibson. They were the highest paid actor back in the days. These guys used to make $25-30 million per movie, and I did meet them past their peak time. So it's not so much about branding, but it's about the experience. Obviously, there's always a combination of how much the studio is paying them to make the movie, whether they say, okay, I cannot say no to $10 million or $8 million, I'm going to do it, and let me just work out with this young director or whatever it is. And sometimes it's really, you need to come in and with your passion heart. Like, listen, I made get Tommy Lee Jones to work. I knew that he comes in for the money. He didn't care about the role. He didn't care about anything. But I killed him with my kindness. And then we stay friends. So now he comes to LA, and I helped his daughter to get a job, and so you develop a relationship, and then obviously it's easier in the future. Although I did a mistake in my career, I think that if you're really watching successful directors and filmmakers that had the chance to work with big actors, because really not a lot of people had the chance to work with the A-list actors. Smart directors, not as much as I am, writing those stars. It's called, if you actually capture a movie star to work with you, you need to write him, which means you worked with Michael Shannon. Yes, you gave him his first big movie opportunity. You guys had a great success together. You need to do everything to keep on working with him. You work with Kevin Costner, no matter what. Yes, you need to work with him. You work with Ryan Reynolds.
Are you saying that's the conventional thinking is what you're saying?
That's really, if you're looking at career of big directors, from Marty Scorsese to they find an actor, the actor works for them, and they just writing this actor. They will do as many movies they can do that these actors will somehow fit, and then they're gonna expand and move somewhere else. But I did kind of like a mistake because I worked with all those great actors and then I never worked with them again. I mean, Ray is the first actor that I worked again with. I didn't work again with James Franco. I didn't work again with Michael Shannon. I didn't work with Wynona Ryder. I didn't work with Marisa Tomei. I didn't work with Kevin yet. What are we looking for? I didn't work with Gary Oldman. I didn't work with Ryan Reynolds. I mean, all those names, even with Gal. Because for me, it's like, I don't like to make movies as much. Often, like I cannot make a movie every year. Mm-hmm. So for me, it's usually the average of like every 2-3 years I'm making a film. And when I make a film, I see a story, and that story has faces, and those faces has nothing to do with the faces that I worked with. At least in my mind.
That's the point about casting that I had for you. It seems like everyone, not everyone, but like Kevin Costner, even Tommy Lee Jones to a degree, James Franco, or Chris Evans, even, or David Schwimmer. Is it a conscious choice in these films that their brand and kind of what we know them to be and most other films or shows are in, they weren't really those guys. I mean, Captain America, you had them hacking up people's bodies and in a freezer, Yeah. Is that a conscious choice?
And Chris will tell you, if you're going to ask Chris about the Iceman, he still is one of his best roles. I mean, as a performer.
I honestly had not seen the Iceman for whatever reason. Just kind of, as I checked it out a little while back, it's like every character is like, I didn't know that was David Schwimmer at first. Took me a moment to register. Oh, that's David Schwimmer.
That's the guy from Friends.
Yeah. But no, like, but that Chris Evans character, it's like, okay, do I need to like this guy because he's kind of quirky, but he's doing some horrible things. And I think that's another thing as kind of a through line is both in. With Michael Shannon, with Kevin Costner's characters, these are people who are morally reprehensible to some degree, but they're still the hero kind of. You're still kind of rooting for them in a way, and that's a trick.
I love the anti-hero story. For me, it's like, every time. Although I gotta say, in the new film I did, it's the first film that the villain, which played by Ray Liotta, brilliantly actually, is a very defined villain. But in cinema and in TV, it's very hard to see good villains. A real bad guy, it's like you really need to dig deep. So I always believe that the real bad guy is within the guy itself. So it's like, if I'm telling a story about you, so what is the conflict? What is the devil? Where is Satan sits? He sits within you. So I always was attracted to stories like that, where with the villain is the person itself.
But any father identifies with Michael Shannon because you look at that guy and go, God, you believe him when he says, "I'm doing everything for my family." You believe him when you're casting. How do you make your casting choice? Like, and I've auditioned. I've been very fortunate. I've auditioned for some phenomenal directors on callbacks. I wasn't cast, and they won Academy Awards. So I think the key is get me on a callback. Don't cast me. That's when you can win an award. Right. Apparently.
No, you have a great voice. I'm enjoying just listening to you.
Oh, so that's very kind of you.
By the way, that's for me. That's a starting point. Voice for me is one of the most important, believe it or not, things in casting. I mean, if I have a great looking female or man, and they look great, and everybody says, "Oh, he's going to be a movie star," and then they're coming in and the opening line is like, "Hi," like, oh no. I cannot listen to them when I'm standing in front of them. How can I watch them in editing for a year? So voice is a big deal. But I think what people need to understand, and folks at home that watching this, and that the casting process of a movie is, you have two stages of it. You have, first of all, what I called the live or die casting, which means you need to find your foundation pillars that will justify this movie to exist. And that process is long, usually, That
Is
process.
that related to financing?
Yeah.
When you
It's
say,
like, you come
okay.
into the say, oh, yeah, here's a script. Great. What do you want to do to it, Ariel? Oh, I want to do this. I want to change. I want to make the opening different. I want to make the ending. For me, the movie is about that. I'm seeing visually this. So I'm selling myself or the vision. But once that happens, no movie is going to go into production if the star of the film, or if it's a female or a male, will justify the budget. Because you need a certain amount of money to make this film. You ask him for a certain amount of days to make this movie. So you need to be justified. So then the studio basically say, okay, so who do you want? And I'm going to go to Iceman because that's a great story of casting. And I said, well, I saw a play in New York with Michael Shannon, and I saw another. He did this movie with Leo that some what's his name? He was nominated for Academy Award for that. It's Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet and Michael Shannon in maybe not some. I can't remember. What was the name of the director of American Beauty?
I'm
1917. He directed 1917 as well. Anyway, we Google this. Folks know we can Google. But anyway, the point is, like, I saw Michael Shannon. I was like, this is the guy. This is my guy. And I came to the studio, and I remember at that point at Lionsgate and Millennium and Avi Lerner looked at me and was like, Michael, who? And I'm like, yeah, he was Academy Award nominated for this film, and he's amazing theater actors. And look at him. He looked like Jaws in James Bond. I mean, for me, it's like, he looks like the guy. And they said no. I said, why don't you get Sylvester Stallone to play, Arnold Schwarzenegger, or whatever, what the name they threw on me to play the lead? And I'm like, no. So I had to go and shoot and pay for it on my own money. And the producer, El Bleiberg, we paid and we made a test scene with Michael Shannon. And that test scene got the confidence of the studio that this guy can do. So sometimes, but then they told me, but around him, you need to have movie stars. So I had to go and ask James to come. And James was supposed to play Chris Evans' role, but then James' dad passed away, so he could not make it. So then I asked a favor from Chris, which I knew. So Chris came on board. And then it was Benicio del Toro, that was before Ray Liotta attached. Then I had to so I had to put, sometimes it's like, you have to pile up. If you're fighting for a main guy that is not a name per se, it's old formulation financing, you had to always surround it with a lot of names.
It's kind of like if you're cooking, you want to have your main ingredients got to be what you want it to be, but the supporting ingredients, the seasonings, you want to make sure that they're on point as well.
100%. But it's a brutal process. It's because sometimes you are looking for your perfect actors and who are the best actors that can come in, and especially what we're starting to find out right now in making movies or television is that nobody is available. Nobody's available. It's like, I mean, you need to wait today anywhere between 6 to 18 months to majority of cast because everybody's booked. There's so much, because movie stars used to only make movies, so no problem. We're gonna, they're making a movie, and then what's the next picture? Now they're making movies, and then between the movies they're making 6 months of TV, and then after that they're making, and then they cannot, and they have an obligation to Marvel because they already did the Avengers, and it's gone for a year, and then they're coming back and like, no, they have a show with Apple, so that's another 5 months. So availability right now is brutal. And
by the way, on that note, I don't even know how some of these movies get made, because you've got to get at least, like these Avengers movies, you have to get 5-6 people all with a schedule aligning to get them in there.
Crazy amount of monies, and those monies are paid, and everybody that is in that food chain is doing everything in his power to convince, to influence, and to maintain the fact that the star is going to be there on time and available with his family in London, whatever they're shooting the show. So availability is becoming... But because of the world we're living also now, and streamers starting to realize that, is that names is not necessarily, because they don't need to get you out of the house to watch a movie. And how many movie stars today you will go and watch whatever they do? Maybe for me, maybe a couple. Leo DiCaprio.
Well, I'd say The Angel's a great example. Most people not terribly familiar with the names of some of the people in the film, but man, it's just. In fact, I started watching it some time ago, not even realizing you directed it yet. I just kind of was. It was come on. I was just sitting down, I was having a bite to eat, and I was like, man, I'm in. I'm in this. And one of the things I loved about that, and that the look of that, and also the look of Criminal. Do you use the same DP or cinematographer, or do you have a preference, or do you come in there with a look in mind?
I think I found the guy that I, want to get old with on this movie, Frankie DeMarco. He's a DP that tried to work with me for 10 years. He's been always trying to and somehow I always chose somebody else. But no, I mean, if you're going to interview the DPs I work with or Frankie, they will tell you I'm very, very much involved in where the camera is, what lenses, how the lighting feels, what's the temperature of that room feels like. So I'm very much involved, and I think that if you're putting all the movies together, they all kind of like have a similarity on the feel. Some of them is a little bit more action, but still, there's like the long lenses and or whatever I choose to tell a story in a separate scene. But I was unfortunate to not necessarily have that DP that through all these years, because again, I can tell you that it's a huge relief when you have already your crew ready and the band is just coming back together to just do another tour. It makes a huge difference on the quality and the process of making a film. Obviously,
I love that. I mean, just the amount of handheld stuff that was going on in Criminal. I just love the feel it reminded me. It did have a tone like the Bourne movies. It did have that same kind of. You felt like the action, the momentum never really let up. I really enjoyed it just from an aesthetic point of view there. But what were your movies as a kid? Were they the action movies? Were they just, is it a constellation of different stuff?
Many thrillers. I mean, I was obsessed about Hitchcock. This was like kind of like the American British influence that I had as a kid. Like the first movie I watched in my life was Rear Window. And I was obsessed about him. But then again, my brother, who was a real big film buff, and he won every competition about film knowledge, and then of course became a lawyer and then venture capital and went to do high tech.
Y'all did the other thing. You weren't wanting to necessarily do film. You ended up in film. He was wanting to do creative.
He was the genius. So he was literally, my brother was the genius. I was like the maybe the technical guy and a person and a people person, and he was more closed but the genius, he watched every Tchaikovsky and Fellini and Truffaut, and so but by him going and watching, anyway, from Woody Allen to every really amazing filmmaker in the history of filmmaking I was exposed to it in a very young age. So I was sitting there and watching, Claude Lelouch movies and like crazy French.
How much older than you is he?
5 years. Five and a half years. So basically when he was a teenager and I was 11, 12 years old, I was already sitting down and watching all those amazing films of those great filmmakers, not even understanding what I'm watching in some of them, but understanding that there is a much bigger layer into cinema than just a story and a projection of an action. But, I still tell my brother sometimes, it's like, man, imagine that we were the Vromen brothers. I mean, now look at the brothers. All the brothers are doing so well, because there got to be one brother that he's really, really deep in his mind and his knowledge and his depth. And there's another brother that is really visuals and eccentric and can convince people. And I was that guy. My brother is definitely, was the deep person. Like until today, like every time I'm talking to him about films, it's almost become annoying because he's so smart And he can, he's like, oh, no, if you would watch Bergman movie that he did and did it in 67, you're going to be like Fanny and Alexander.
Yeah, like that idea that the past movies influenced the way things done. Anthony Bourdain on his show, he always had this one edict. He was always trying to find a directing style or a cinematography style from some movie and have that be what influenced a different episode. I'll be the first to admit there are a lot of names that influence a lot of great filmmakers. I've never seen their work, but it gives me something to sit down with all these streamers. All the stuff's available. You can watch it somewhere.
Yeah, but by the way, it's not that true because a lot of the great films in the history of cinema is not available. I mean, maybe you can buy some on iTunes and Amazon, but Netflix, by the way, on its first round was full of amazing source of materials of foreign films, and the libraries were incredible. But they switch all those libraries to originals. And the originals, as you know, it's a hit and miss with them. So I actually wonder if I think there is there used to be a great channel on cables that used to have all those great films.
Oh yeah, I know. Like Hulu's got like the Criterion collection or
yeah,
whatever.
Something like that. So by the way, I'm wondering when is going to be the next streamer that's just going to be. But then again, these are all libraries, so who knows even who control the rights of all those films right now in terms of.
That's the thing, which is it's a little bit of the Wild West, but it's interesting to kind of sit back and watch it. But as far as being a creator, right now there's work for you. There's things to do, and that's like the zen of it.
Oh, there's work. I'm telling actors, friends of mine that acting, and that's like, man, you living in definitely the golden age. Super busy.
Well, Ariel, I got real quick what I call my Preston's Lucky 7, like to fire off 7 questions. Everybody I work with, just a little extra insight, and let you get going and hang out with that lovely 3-year-old you got. Okay. First question I got: what is your favorite comfort food? I'm very curious, being Jewish. I'm like, people coming from Israel, or it's like, is it something from home, or is it something?
No, it's a great question. I love the matzo ball soup. And there's nothing I like more.
Do you go down to Cantor's Deli, down to Fairfax? Do you?
It's actually Cantor's. It's still open, but there was there was a Greenblatt. There was Greenblatt Deli on Sunset and next to the Laugh Factory, but they shut down. So they had the best matzo ball soup, but they're not existing anymore.
I'll tell you what, if you make your way, if you're down in New Orleans or next time in LA, I've got the recipe. See, I know my recipe is good. It's something I came up with because my family handed it over to me, said, okay, Passover, you're the guy. And then my ex-wife's family did the same thing. I'm like, well, I'm a big fan of making it more like a stew, not like that clear broth. I like a little chunks of chicken. And
stew is amazing. I mean, for me, it's like, another food that I love and as a comfort is I love good hummus, but that's because I'm from Israel and from the Middle East.
Of course.
But lately in LA they got some good restaurants, so I found some good. But yeah, hummus and matzo ball soup. Those are the two things that if I eat them, I feel home.
Yeah, that and for me it's funny you mention matzo ball soup. That and making lox, and I actually taught my daughter, and she basically does it now. We go get some good salmon, cure it, we make it at home, and it's better than anything you can get in the store too.
That's right.
But I can talk all day about food. But now, if you were to sit down, next question, 3 people, anybody in the world, where you can sit down and just have a coffee and just four of y'all at a table have a talk. Who are 3 people you would love to sit down with?
I would say I would love to sit with Marty Scorsese. He's following me on Instagram, but I could not get a coffee with him yet. I would love to sit with, and I did sit with him, but I just like even now more curious to hear more about what he has to say with Elon Musk. Just like to see where his mindset is. And I would say, I don't know, another person that I was lately very curious to talk. I guess it's maybe Helen Mirren. I heard some amazing interviews, and I just like, and a friend of mine just did a movie with her, a guy Nativ Golda, And even what he told me about the experience of working with her was just incredible. So
she was cast to play Golda Meir.
That's right.
And there was some issue, like they said, well, she's not Jewish. I'm like, no, I can't imagine any other living actress that could do that.
Oh, she's phenomenal. Phenomenal.
Yeah, and I remember when we were younger. Of course, you're in Israel, but I remember being in Sunday school, and we watched the Golda Meir movie, the one back in the, I guess, early '80s, and I was like, man, that's like that's
the Iron Lady.
There's something about her. One of my favorite quotes from her. Somebody said, "What do you wish you had done more of, or whatever in life?" She's like, "I wish I would have told more people to fuck off."
Yeah.
Now, another question: who was your celebrity crush growing up, though? That was your next question.
I think it was this French actress, Sophie Marceau. She was in Braveheart, and she was also in that French film that I was, as a kid, I was obsessed about, called The Party, La Boum. So, yeah.
You were giving me so many movies to write. I've been making notes of some of these movies here that I need to go watch, Now, next question real quick is, what is your definition of a perfect day? Get up, you get going, and just kind of the arc of the day. What would be a perfect day for you?
I think a perfect day is a day that, first of all, I have no pain, as you can relate to. So no body pain, that I don't need to deal with anything with my health. So that's a good day. I think another good day is any moment of the day that I found myself receiving some good news on some of my journey path. For instance, booking a big show, or getting an actor saying yes, or watching a scene and finally it's working, and the cut, or showing the movie to people and getting good response, or hearing my daughter saying a new word. So I think every good news about the process, about any process that you are in a day, always get me really satisfied and pumped. So and by the way, sometimes a good day is also a very negative, like that. If I get rejected, like a strong rejection for me is also, I learn how to turn it into a positive feeling.
It's so funny you say that, because I am very much the same way, because being a director, working in this industry, I mean, every part of the process are wins and losses, but altogether it's an education,
Yes.
Now, the other question is, of course, since you're not just film, but music, you're on an island 1 year, one album, one DVD you can bring with you for that whole year. What would that album be, and what would that DVD be?
Wow. That's almost one of the toughest questions I've ever been asked. To choose one album and one movie or show. I would probably say that I would go for probably a Pink Floyd album, maybe Dark Side of the Moon. I know I'm still obsessed about Pink Floyd. And if it was a movie, and one movie that I could watch it again and again, I think it would be Plane, Trains, and Automobiles.
That is so crazy. I literally, last fella I spoke with, comedian Craig Shoemaker, said the exact same thing. So already out of the gate, we got a theme running in my show here. Yes, Planes, Trains, Automobiles. But who doesn't love John Candy, I mean, that's just like, he's a guy that left us too soon.
I watched that film, I'm not joking. I watched that movie about 1,000 times. Every time I watch it, I can just rewatch it. And Steve Martin, it was one of the best Christmas films of all time.
Now that's another thing. I just got to go rewatch that. Now, next question. If you weren't doing this for a living, what would you be doing?
Outside of directing and making music and DJing?
Exactly.
I cannot. It's funny that, because so many, I had when you're going through some downsides in your career, or when you're not necessarily doing everything that you wanted to do, I always have those questions like, okay, I'm quitting. What am I going to do? I'm going to go back to working in companies and high tech, or no? I really will fight to death to keep on doing what I'm doing. I really cannot think about anything that will make me satisfied I mean, and that goes along also with a lot of money. Like, I mean, if somebody's going to come to me, like, just leave everything you do right now. Leave the music, leave the film, and here's a paycheck that's going to turn your life into, like, golden cage. I will be saying respectfully and humbly no, because money was never a driving force in my life.
That's a litmus test. You're doing what you need to be doing, right? Because you can't see doing anything else. You know, that's the way I look at it. You know, if you love what you're doing and you can't imagine yourself doing anything else. I've heard many actors that I've spoken with over the years say that it's like, if you can't imagine doing anything else, then this is the thing for you.
Yeah.
You know. Now, last question: if you could jump into your DeLorean, cruise back to when you're 16 years old, what is just that piece of advice you're giving yourself, just a heads up, like, by the way, this is a piece of info you need to, you know, follow?
You have good questions, man. Like, because they have soul. I mean, it's questions with soul, because it's really reflecting on the person that sits in front of you and answering those. The advice that I will give to me when I was 16 will be that everything that you think, the reflection, especially on that age, the reflection of people around you, the reflection of the world around you, is only a weird, awkward mirror of your own eyes, which means don't ever think that your action and doing has to be in correlation with the acceptance of others. Because I was, till relatively late age, to mid-30s actually, I was so sensitive to what people had to say about me, or what they have to say about my work, and what to say about, like, you know, am I going to make it? Am I going to... Like, I had so much pressure that I put myself. So I think if I'm going to go back in age, it's like, just don't worry. Really don't worry. Because it's all eventually interpretation of your mind.
It's all subjective, you know. What I tell my kids is that, on that note, and I love that, is that I always tell my kids, the way people act towards you, what they say about you, what you're doing, is more of a reflection on them than it is you. It's their interpretation, you know.
100%.
I said, don't try to please anybody, myself included. You know, do that thing. And like you said, you can't imagine yourself doing anything else. That's when the play kind of locks in, and the act of doing your gig is the play, you know.
I mean that, you know, when I'm thinking about even hearing myself saying that, it's kind of like comes back to not to a specific thing, but basically like that. If you're thinking that you are in a bad place because you feel that the reflection of the eyes that you believe that so many eyes are looking at you, and if you're gonna quit or you're gonna do something, they're gonna be all like ditching you and put you into shame. I really understood in my life that that's actually the opposite. It's like you can not be influenced by other thoughts, and you need to know. And I will give it also another quick advice is like that this shall be past. I mean, everything bad that you think at the moment that is a disaster will pass, and it's all going to be good. That's the hard thing, I think, during the pandemic is I know it's going to be over. I mean, if it's a year. Yeah, I mean, I don't mean to be flip about it, but I understand it will pass eventually. But for these kids, it will pass and it will be okay. Everything is eventually working. If you are down, you're going to get a great rise. If you're up, you might fall, but it will pass.
You got to ride that middle lane pretty well, you know. It's not get too up, too down. And I tell my kids, it's like, you know, the same thing, this exact same thing. It's like this stuff that's going on. It's not going to be. And being in high school, man, that's the hardest time to actually let that be a reality for you. You know, I
don't know even how those kids are handling this. I mean, I see my daughter. Like, I feel so sad because they really don't see much. The parents became paranoid, especially here in California. I mean, people really lost their mind. But that's a Joe Rogan interview.
Exactly. We just try to do the right thing, take care of the people around us. But Ariel, I more than appreciate you taking the time out, being very generous with your time, especially just coming right back in from Mexico, man. That's you've got. See, hey, you may be near 50, but that's a lot of energy right there. You know, if you're go. But
yeah, I gotta. Yeah, I don't know where I really need to keep on training and be strong because I need a lot of energy. That's
well,
true.
I'm the 1992. It's now is it
We don't know the title yet. I mean, the title is still. It's going to be probably a decision of a studio, but the writer, the original author, Sacha Penn, called this project April 29, 1992. That was the.
And this is about the post-Rodney King decision in Los Angeles and the riots.
It's not about the riots. It's happening on the night the riots started, and eventually it's just it's in a group of thieves that they're taking advantage to steal this catalytic converters, platinum factory, basically, because they used to make a lot of industry here in LA, and they used to make those catalytic converters for the cars, and they used to put platinum in it. So the factory used to hold a safe with all the bullions of platinum. So those guys basically took advantage that basically there was no police, there was no law and order on that day in Los Angeles. So they're taking advantage and robbing the place. Obviously, getting the wrong guy is appearing there with his son, and sadly it's becoming like almost like a die-hard situation. But the movie does tell you the story of what happened that day. You feel the riots, you see them. It's happening during that. So it's a pretty exciting film. I'm actually very, very happy with this one.
Yeah, that's great. It's just so weird to think about how long ago that really was.
Well, 30 years exactly.
Well, Mazel Tov on finishing that film up, and looking forward to seeing it. And my friend, you've been very, very generous with your time, and I certainly appreciate it. If you're ever in New Orleans, man, I'll hook you up with some matzo ball soup, some good stuff.
Sounds good, my man.
Well, there you go. Ariel Vromen, what an interesting guy. Enjoyed that chat, and looking forward to his new movie, 1992, something like that. As he mentioned, the name could change between now and when it's released, but great director. Man, I really love his work. Great DJ also. He's super, super talented. Thank you again for taking part in this episode. Come on back for the next one. Want to see you. Don't forget, head on over to storyandcraftpod.com. Once again, storyandcraftpod.com. That way you can connect with all the social media links, shoot me a note, stay in touch, sign up for the newsletter, and just kind of generally stay up to date on what's going on with Story and Craft. Okay, so I'm going to head on out. You have a killer rest of your day, and we'll see you next week right here on Story and Craft.
That's it for this episode of Story and Craft. Join Mark next week for more conversation right here on Story and Craft. Story and Craft is a presentation of Mark Preston Productions, LLC. Executive producer is Mark Preston. Associate producer is Zachary Holden. Please rate and review Story and Craft on Apple Podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. You can subscribe to show updates and stay in the know. Just head to storyandcraftpod.com and sign up for the newsletter. I'm Emma Dillon. See you next time, and remember, keep telling your story.